afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Josh Palmer. I am the head of content and research for eScribe Meetings. Very happy to have you join us here today for another installment of our Atlas Leadership Series, which is kind of a thought leadership series for city clerks and municipal administrators. It's a forum for us to kind of discuss topics that are salient to city clerks and municipal administrators, workflow, work process, optimizing those things. So very happy to have you join us. We'll get underway here in about a minute and let a few more people come into the room before we actually get started with the presentation today. But very happy to have you with us today, and hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation with our panelists. And we'll get started here in just a moment. I'll say about 50 seconds to find the moment. And some of the topics we'll be covering today with our panelists are the many wide range of responsibilities and diverse project portfolios that the city clerk's office has, how adopting technology can help you reclaim and do a better job at time management, and then just the importance of effective municipal and public meetings in general. So we'll get underway here in 15 seconds. So if you are here for the eScribe Behind the Scenes with City Clerks webinar, you are in the exact right place. Again, thank you for joining us. I'll go ahead and get started with just a little bit about us. If you're not familiar with the eScribe brand or the eScribe product, the eScribe Meetings management tool, we are proudly founded in Markham, Ontario, in Canada in 2000. So we're a proud Canadian software maker that's making our way into the North American markets here. One thing that's interesting about us or our position in the market is that we are a dedicated provider and we're solely focused on public meeting management software solutions. So anything that goes into administering a public meeting in a municipal setting, we have built purpose-built tools for clerks and city administrators and city and town county managers across the North America, which makes us a little bit unique in the marketplace. But overall, our goals are very not basic, but very simple. Our goal is to help you have a more streamlined meeting preparation, more effective municipal and public meetings, and improved accessibility and engagement for communities and their stakeholders. So that's just a little bit about us. You can find us at escribemeetings.com. This is just an old chestnut, I like to call it, from our founder and CEO, who continues to lead the organization today, Parun Chadha. There are three types of meetings, whether it's a public meeting, a board meeting, or any type of meeting. There's the meeting you prepared for, there's the meeting that you actually had, and there's the meeting that you wished you had. So that post-meeting kind of stairwell moment. We hope you always have that third type of meeting. That's what our software endeavors to help you do. So without further ado, we'll get into the housekeeping here. Just a quick reminder, this is a Zoom webinar. All attendees are mute by default. That just cuts down on the chatter for us and lets us focus on the content and the topics at hand. However, we do want to hear from you. We love to see engagement from the audience and the attendees. So do you have a comment, a piece of feedback, just an in-the-moment spontaneous idea, please share it with us in the chat section. And if you want to have a more formalized kind of question and answer, there's also the Q&A feature. I'll be monitoring both as I can throughout the presentation today. And we'll try to answer your questions in real time if it's salient to the topic at hand. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A session for the panelists towards the end of the presentation. And right before that panelist Q&A session, we do want to hear back from you in a more formal survey manner as well. We ask that you take a quick 3-question, 15-second poll. Basically just helps us understand if we're doing a great job in presenting the content to you. Literally takes 15 seconds or less. So if you could help us with that, be greatly appreciative in advance. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce today's panelists or speakers, if you were. We have today with us Shelley Chappell. She's a city clerk with lots of municipal experience. She's currently serving in the city of National City, California. So welcome to the presentation, Shelley. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. And then we also have Trykwinski Hicks. Also, he goes by Q. Legislative assistant for the city of Albany, Georgia. Trykwinski, Q. Nice to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Great. And if panelists, you could turn on your cameras. So the one first thing that we wanted to talk about in this webinar presentation Well, it's just the many responsibilities of clerks. And I'm sure most of the attendees in our audience today are probably in the municipal setting or administrator setting. So this isn't new news to anybody necessarily, but just to kind of review what are all those projects in the city clerk's office portfolio. Maybe I'll start with you, Q. Maybe your role or your profile might be a little bit different as a legislative assistant, but I'm assuming you work for the clerk's office. Can you just kind of enumerate all the different projects, maybe the unique and various contrasts that you have in your day-to-day work?
Sure. I do a lot of different things. Mainly I am the right hand to the city clerk. So that means doing all the things that she can't put her hands on at the time. So that will go from being the liaison between our records management company, which is Thornatiska Heritage Center. I may be over there helping archive records, me be retrieving records, helping put the agenda together, sending out the agenda. I manage eScribe for our for the most part. So she doesn't have to do all the back end things of that nature. She's not a tech savvy person, so she doesn't like to get into the back end of things. So I do most of that stuff for her, and she kind of does the administrative things of keeping everything together, and keeping things running smoothly. So that's pretty much what I do. I kind of handle the stuff she doesn't want to put her hands on.
And Shelley, do you have somebody like you in your office that supports you that way? And can you give us kind of just an overview of your project portfolio?
Sure, yeah. I do have a deputy city clerk who, like you, does help me manage everything. She is my right hand. So, but in our office, it's just the two of us. So we really, depend on each other to get things done. And I manage eScribe on a daily basis. I'm constantly in there reviewing reports or, setting agendas, setting meetings, things like that. So, yeah,
Great. Yeah. And, the wide range, I mean, meeting preparation, that's what eScribe and execution is designed for. So I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all those other things. Public payments, maybe on your digital website, administrating, registrations for voters, those types of things. If you have that in your office, upcoming elections, I don't know if you guys are getting stressed out about that or not.
yes, we have.
But yeah, I've always been told, and I'm obviously not a city clerk, I'm more of a content and marketing guy,
Yeah.
but I've always been told that if there's no other place for a project, that it always ends up parked with the city clerk. Is that true in your guys' recollection?
It is
This
in
is
mine, and
100% true.
yeah, and we're pretty good
100%
at
true.
creating our own work too. So,
That's great. So with that, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and you'll hear me reference a couple points, audience members, from a State of the Clerk's Office survey that we completed earlier this year. You can find it on the homepage of our website if you want to download the data. I have a couple of slides that speak to this, but one thing that I found was really interesting. Shelley, you're National City, California, population of 55,000 residents, according to Wikipedia. It's probably a little bit different now. And Q, Albany, Georgia, 67,000 residents. And I didn't bring this slide with me. I should have, as I'm referencing. But one thing that I found was really interesting, that the city's clerk's office doesn't grow with population. Despite that there might be more collaboration with departments, there might be more activities, more projects. You typically don't get an additional headcount beyond maybe 2 or 3 staffers until you're at the 100,000 or the 150,000 resident mark. Has that been true in your guys' experience as well?
Yeah, it's been 3 full-time and 1 part-time since I've been here, and it'll be 15 years in November.
Oh wow. Yeah. So that's a long time of just keeping all that on your shoulders. And Shelley, you've served in a couple different municipalities or communities. Has that been your experience as well?
yeah, I have. I've been in 5 different cities, and so the current city, I was the only person in the office when I came on board 5 years ago. And I now have a deputy city clerk, and I'm currently in the process of hiring a records specialist to help me with the records specifically. But yeah, in the offices in the past, it's been 2 to 4 people. I had one office, I had 11 staff members, and that was awesome. But
Wow. How big was the city there?
I worked for Burbank,
Oh,
so
okay,
up in
yeah, we talked
LA.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
lots of stuff to do in Burbank,
yeah.
California. That's great. And Kate, you made a really what I think is an interesting point, and Shelley, you obviously have had a lot of experience over 5 different clerk roles.
Mhm.
Is that the other really interesting factor of the State of Clerk's Office survey that we found was that there was this real interesting bell curve where the length of service was either very short. A lot of clerks were coming in the 1 to 5 year mark for total municipal service throughout their careers, or they were very high at the 15-20 year mark, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if this speaks to something of, is there a younger generation or more people interested in that city clerk role, or is it more kind of a long-term professional career that you expect to be in for the rest of your professional life? Shelley, I'll kick it to you.
Okay. For me, my experience is most people have been in it for a long time, like here in the San Diego area. Uh, Most of us came in about the same time, about 15 to 25 years-ish. I have seen a lot of turnover in the last, 5 to 6 years, a lot of just people not really sticking with it. I know when our deputy city clerk, she went through some training with other city clerks or deputy city clerks and city clerks, and some of them just said, yeah, this isn't going to be my long-term thing, because it really is a niche. I mean, it's almost like being a librarian. You really have to like what you're doing and like this kind of work. It's not for everyone. It's very detail oriented, and so yeah, it's not for everyone, but I love it. So I've been
That's
doing it for
great.
25 years. I love it.
And Q, how about you? Have you seen a kind of a new cadre of clerks joining municipal offices there, or is it more kind of the long-term professional, this is my life, I'm going to do this for my career for the rest of my life?
I think it depends on the city and the person.
Mhm.
Me saying that is based on, I've learned that by going to a lot of these conferences with the clerks, that a lot of clerks in small cities do a lot more things are required of them than clerks in bigger cities that have a bigger staff.
Mhm.
So sometimes when you get a job like that, you walk into unknown things or things that weren't told to you that you'll be doing when you get there. And it's kind of a when you walk into something you unexpected of doing and then it becomes tedious over time. I think that becomes the issue that a lot of clerks move on. That I don't think they move on from the profession. They just move on to cities that they can handle. They have things that they're used to doing.
Right,
But
where there's
for the clerk's position, I think it is a long-term goal and a long-term career. It just
yeah,
that depends on the person and where they're going.
right, yeah. And Shelley, you mentioned just the need to be detail oriented. Could you expand on that? Like, what, just for a layperson like me who isn't in the role, like what is the level of detail is needed and why is it so important?
Basically because we're the archivist for the city. So all of the historical records remain here. So anything that we put out, we need to make sure that, it's grammatically correct. It's, if it's scanned, that it's scanned straight. And, I mean, it's just, I've seen some crazy things where, documents are all cattywampus and it's like, that's not right. But I don't have the original document anymore to fix it. So, it's just, there's a lot to it. And you mentioned elections, and it's not just the agenda packets, but it's elections and all different kinds of things, and we have to be on task. There are laws that regulate everything we do. So
Yeah, and yeah, I guess that goes back to accountability, like you mentioned, like the public transparency, the legal record of the city, all those things being so important. And one of the things we wanted to talk about was time management. So I'll just bring up this slide. So when we asked clerks what their biggest challenge was in this we surveyed more than 500 clerks. I think we had 48 of 50 United States represented in 6 out of 10 Canadian provinces. So it was just a great mix of people from all different roles, all different backgrounds, all different sizes of community. And I was just kind of gobsmacked that this number one challenge, what's the biggest challenge clerks face today? And I think a lot of those things you just mentioned, Shelley, are kind of in this laundry list or this eye chart of things. But far and away, time management is the biggest hurdle or the biggest challenge that clerks face. Um, I don't know if you guys can kind of like go in the way back machine to when you first started in those first 1 to 2 years. How big of a challenge was time management? How did you overcome that challenge? Q, I'll start with you. Yeah.
For me, when I first started, they actually had a typewriter in my office. There was no agenda management system, and um I immediately went to my boss and I was like, if you want me to continue to stay here, we're gonna have to talk about some updates and some upgrades. And we eventually got to an agenda management system, which
Mhm.
was not eScribe at the time. I wasn't happy with it, but it was way better than what we had been doing, which everybody did everything paper. They would bring everything else to us in paper, and then we would populate everything out. Then we would have to send copies to everybody to confirm with them that that's what they wanted in the agenda packet. Then we would still have to send it out and mail everything and make sure that everybody had a copy. Then that was before we had to post it online, get it to the media. It was so time consuming. It was just frustrating at the beginning, but now it's a breeze compared to what we used to do. This is a breeze.
Yeah, yeah. And Shelley, you and I, in the pre kind of meeting that we had about this, you had mentioned that you've spent, I don't know how many hours or weeks or months over your career with the printer copier as well, with paper copies, and how much that is, how much time that consumed for you in your role.
Yes, it did. And just, yeah, just the waste of time and resources, using a copy machine and putting everything in binders. And then if there was a change, you had to go back and change all the binders. And it was just very labor intensive.
Yeah, and I made the point earlier as well, Shelley, that you kind of, I don't want to say you batted this down, but like for me, I've come from a security software background before I took on this role. And one of the things that was really interesting was just not only is a paper-based process just a risk to your time management challenge, but it also could be, if there was an executive committee agenda that you had to send out, somebody leaves that in the back of a taxi or an Uber or something like that. That could be some sensitive materials getting out the door. You had mentioned that those are typically in closed door sessions, and that the attorney for the city takes back those copies before before everybody exits the room. But I'm always really curious about just how permanent paper is, and that it's not like a digital profile where you can just click it off or delete it. If you lose that copy, it's gone and it's out in the world forever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, our closed session meetings, our city attorney does retain all of the paperwork, so they hand it out at the meeting and then they collect it all, so no one leaves the room with any of that. It's confidential usually, so that I don't have to worry about. But I'm sure there are documents out there that they are confidential, and if they were found in the back of a taxi, I guess it
Or
probably
in somebody
good
in
thing.
some council member's basement or something like that.
Yeah.
They're smart. Okay. So audience members, if you couldn't tell, both Shelley and Q are eScribe customers. So we do welcome your comments, your feedback, or your questions about their use of the software as well. We'll try to keep most of the discussion agnostic. We don't want this to be a sales presentation, but if you do have questions about that, please do share them in the chat or the Q&A with us, and we'll be happy to try to answer them for you. So Shelley, we've talked a little bit before. You are a somewhat recent eScribe customer. Were you using any kind of agenda management software like Q mentioned before you joined National City, or in your current role?
So in my current role, we've been using eScribe for 2 years. And prior to that, here in this city, they had an electronic-ish kind of process. They did not really use a workflow, but they did have a system where it was automated once everything got into the system. The reports would be PDF'd and printed out, distributed to the city manager's office, and then the copies would be made and distribution and all of that. Prior to this city, I've worked with other electronic systems such as, it was not eScribe, but they were other electronic systems. But honestly, and not a sales pitch, it's just eScribe has like topped all of the systems I've ever worked with for the workflows, the agenda process, the minutes. I mean, the whole thing. It's a nice package, and it all works together. And that isn't always something that you find. You know, they'll try to sell it to you that way, but it doesn't end up working that way. It doesn't integrate that
Yep.
way. And I find that eScribe is very fluid. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Q, did you have any previous experience of going from you mentioned going from typewriters, which I'm like thinking like carbon copies where you actually have to like pull the yellow and pink copies off there. That kind of ages me a little bit that I know about that. But did you have any kind of experience bringing those paper-based processes in kind of more of a digital medium and the time savings that might have delivered?
Yes. We ended up with another product before this, which was one we did not choose. There was one that was chosen for us.
Right.
We went out for a bid and we told them what we wanted. They didn't give us what we wanted. So when it came around this time, I was like, if we can't get what we want, we'll stay with what we have already. And we ended up getting exactly what we wanted. And I knew exactly what I wanted because, like Shaylee said, people will try to sell you things and tell you they work a certain way, and they don't necessarily end up working the way they told you they would.
Right.
eScribe has worked exactly like they told me it would. Honestly, it's worked better than I thought it thought it would, and I've been able to do all the back end work myself, which is probably the best thing ever because I never have to call you all for problems that we have in order to get them fixed and then wait hours before they're fixed before I can move on. So
Yeah.
that's been the best part about this whole situation
I
is that
agree.
I've always been able to fix all my problems on the back end without having to call you all.
That's great. Well, we welcome your call, Q. You can call us anytime, really.
They are quick when you do call them.
They are.
And that's one thing I've learned since accepting this role and speaking with our customer support specialists, that they really are just they understand how much accountability is riding on the clerk's shoulders. You can't cancel that meeting. It's a legal obligation, right? To have that meeting, that public meeting, you have to have posted, weeks and weeks in advance. So there's a lot riding on that meeting, even if it's just a normal quote unquote meeting. So yeah, I always appreciate that. And Shelley, I like, or Q, I like you say that we under promise and over deliver. That's something I always strive for.
True. It is true.
We didn't talk about this in the pre-call, but I'm curious, Q, you mentioned this. I know procurement processes, especially in municipal administrations, can be long, they can be drawn out. And one of the main reasons that one of the things that we wanted to know when we did our survey earlier this year was, hey, if you're not using a digital solution, whether it be ours or anybody else's, what is the reason for that? And I'll try to share my deck here again. And the number one was budget constraints, which we all understand. It's taxpayers' money. It's not infinite. It's a very finite resource, and we have to spend that wisely. But the second most common reason was the current process is working. And I think especially with the longer tenure that city clerks have, if you've been in a role 5, 10, 15 years, even if it is kind of a very long, drawn out, manual-based process, you'll figure out how to optimize that and get it to work for you, so to speak, and work for your stakeholders. But I'm curious how, maybe Shelley, you have a point of view on this. How do you go about convincing procurement that this is something that we need? This is something that's going to be a value add to the organization, to the administration, and it's going to be better at engaging our stakeholders and serving our community better. How did you make that case when you went to procurement or your executive stakeholders in the administration?
Yeah, when I went to the executive stakeholders in the organization that I'm currently with, thankfully I'd had experience in other cities and I knew what it would look like on the other end. Once we executed everything and what it would actually look like, how much time it would save staff, not just in the clerk's office, but all over the city.
Mhm.
And so I was able to sell that, the time savings, the efficiencies, the workflow, the fact that with eScribe specifically, it's web-based, so you can actually get on there. A director can get on there online on vacation and approve staff reports if they want to. And that was a selling point. I mean, our directors are busy, and they like the fact that they could actually get on their laptop anywhere in the airport, wherever they are, and approve, reports and things like that. And it doesn't bottleneck. So we don't have the bottlenecks that we used to have. If somebody was on vacation, reports, paper would sit on somebody's desk until they got back from vacation because somebody, we didn't know they were on vacation or whatever. And so it would bottleneck the process, and it doesn't do that anymore. So I was able to sell that, and I can't tell you how many people have come up to me after, since we put this process in the city, and they're like, what did we do before? We have so much more time to do other things. I mean, of course, that time gets filled, but you have so many more things that you can work on. You're not just shuffling paper for staff reports anymore.
Yeah,
So,
and Shelley, you had mentioned when we talked earlier that you would actually have to walk signatures
oh
or
yeah.
paper for signatures to different
It was
counselors.
so bad. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I'd have to, if there was a change, I'd have to take that piece of paper and take it upstairs and switch it out with the other one. I couldn't even email them the new one. They wouldn't accept that. So I had to go out and print it out and take it over there. It was just silliness. I mean, it was really a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah.
So
And Q, from your point of view in Albany, what was the process like for you kind of convincing the stakeholders that you sound like you were kind of a little bit more harsh in your negotiations, but how did you convince them that this was something that would be an ROI on your time management?
From the procurement side of view, how I convinced them was I ended up bringing them another product that I wanted to begin with. I told them that it costs almost 3 times as much as eScribe does, but eScribe has promised me that they do exactly the same thing. So from a procurement point, they was like, can you say, or have you tested it and seen that it does the same thing? And which I had at the time, they had gave us a trial run. And I was very happy with what I saw. And we were able to sell that to them. How I sold it to my staff and my department directors was everybody loves Word. Everybody, if you're a clerk, you gotta love Microsoft Word. If you are one of those people, you get into stuff that you're unfamiliar with, and then you kind of like boggle around, everybody's familiar with Word. I tell them, I sold them on that it's based on a Word platform and it'll be easy for you to use. Everybody's familiar with Word. You don't have to do a whole lot. And what I also sold them on was that if you're out of town, they have a system in place where you can push it to your deputy director to do it for you. You don't have to try. I don't have to try to rush because I'm on vacation to try to get this item complete. I could just pass it on to somebody else.
I love
So
that. Yeah.
I sold it to them on those 2 points, and we've been flying smooth ever since.
That's great. And Shelley, you mentioned that you don't maybe you get that time back temporarily, but like all things, that vacuum gets filled. What did that once you got those time savings back? What are some of the benefits or the results that you got from having additional time, I guess?
just different projects now. So I'm focusing more on our paper our paper files that are, in storage and things like that. And I'm, putting those into a records management system electronically. So I'm able to focus on some of the archived records and get us up to date on that, because we were very, very behind on
that's one
our
of those things that
electronic
just kind of piles
processes.
up literally like
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
time. I thought it was interesting when we spoke earlier, Shelley, that you mentioned that you were able to go to some of the departments you collaborate with and actually take back projects from other stakeholders.
Yes. When I came on board here, they had distributed, well, the person that was in my position before, he had been here for 25 years and was not electronic savvy like Q had indicated in his
Mhm.
experience. And so we kind of just push things off to other departments. So when I came on board, I was able to, streamline this process, and the efficiencies allowed me to take back some of the other responsibilities that are really the clerk's office that had been kind of farmed out.
Mhm.
And of course, staff was, willing to just push that my way. So they didn't have any problem with that. I didn't really have to talk them into it.
That's great. And then I don't know who has a better maybe anecdotal point of view on this, but I think it's important to mention as well is that not only are clerks typically very tenured in their service with in their roles, but they're working with other tenured professionals. So the other professional administrators within the department or the administration may be there for a long time. A lot of counselors can get reelected year over year, or term after term. But then you're also having to deal with kind of a freshman class every term as well in your council and those stakeholders. How do you manage that change management process, both introducing a new workflow to the existing stakeholders, but then also training new director or new counselors or directors, whatever the term may be for your community, on a piece of software, something they might be familiar with? Q sounds like you had a really good pitch in terms of, if you're familiar with MS Word, you can definitely use this. Shelley, did you encounter any challenges there with getting people to adopt the new system?
No, we really didn't. And then, we reduced the training to about a 45-minute training.
Oh,
So
wow.
we take them in, like if we have new staff, we'll take them into our training room and sit them down for 45 minutes and explain to them exactly how you run through this whole process. We have a template that we use for a sample, and they see how easy it is. And they're sold. By the time they leave, they're like, yeah, I can go back to my desk and do this. This is no problem. This is
Mhm.
easy. And as Q mentioned, it's word-based, so everything's very familiar. You don't really have to learn new software to write a report. It's Word.
Right.
So it's very familiar to people. And I think that sells it a little easier because it's not, you're not recreating the wheel. You're not, having to learn something new. It's just something different.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard the adage too. It's like if you're having a hard time convincing a council member or somebody else to adopt a new piece of technology, maybe they're just, I don't want to use the word Luddite, but maybe they're just anti-technology or don't embrace technology as quickly as other people. Is that, so hey, if you can send an email or update your social media profile, you can do this as well. It's just as easy. So
Right.
great.
That was a message that was a message that just went up.
Yeah, Natasha asked, Shelley, can you share your training presentation? So you're already getting requests for your greatest hits here.
So my training presentation is really the module that we get with eScribe. There's a training presentation there. It's electronic, and so we use that for our base, and then we kind of stop it every once in a while, have them work through the process. We make sure that they can sign on and draft a staff report, and then we'll continue the video that
Mhm.
for the training. So it's kind of a mix between ours and eScribe. They've already got it figured out. So
Yeah, I think there are, yeah, sample agendas and templates that are already pre-built for you.
Yeah.
And Natasha, we can certainly share that with you if you'd like to see a sample of that. Just in kind of the historical context and talking about technology adoption, I think especially in the kind of the COVID time period, so many cities had to adopt a more digital profile or more digital presence to be able to ensure that all their citizens and community stakeholders could access and engage with those meetings. Do you feel like that accelerated kind of your municipality cues? Did it accelerate any kind of a digital adoption, we'll call it, for your city?
For us, we got to do more things with eScribe than our previous vendor. That being the citizens like the fact that now that they have a video where they can go online and they can click certain parts of the agenda and zoom straight to that part where they don't have to call us and be like, I don't know what that is in the video. Can you show me? Can you tell me a time? Can you teach me how to fast forward through the video? So now they just go, they pull up the agenda, They click it, it goes straight there. They watch their portion, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and then they're done. They never have to call you. We
Yeah,
avoid a lot of calls just because of that.
that's great. And yeah, that was kind of like exactly my example of not only time savings and efficiency for your administration and your stakeholders, but also for your citizens. My community is not an e-scribe community, but I love the fact that I can hop onto the website. If there's a resolution or a zoning ordinance that I know is going to be kind of a not in my backyard thing, I can just click that timestamp on the video, watch the 2 minutes of discussion and maybe the vote, and I don't have to go into City Hall and sit through a 2 hour meeting or even sit through a 2 hour YouTube. I can just jump to the section that I know is most relevant to me. But Shelley, have you ever had any citizen feedback or community feedback on that?
Yeah, same as Q. And the other thing that we really enjoy here is the e-comment. So when you post your agenda reports, the community can go in and make comments before the meeting. So those are in the record, and we share those with the city council members. And then it's available on the public portal. So they really enjoy that. Then they don't have to come to the meeting. They can make their comment and then they don't have to come down to City Hall
Yeah.
to be
And
heard.
I think it's really interesting too that not only public meetings but just overall city services, the digital adoption rate seems to be going up, and that seems to be really based on community expectations. For instance, if I get a parking ticket, which my wife does not like whatsoever, I expect to be able to pay that parking ticket online now. It's ludicrous to me to think that I would have to like collect my $20 fine and then take it into the city clerk's office or the ticket administrator,
Yeah.
which I do recall doing 10 15 years ago. You'd have to pay in person. How much more convenient like an online presence, even for public meetings, how much that helps just your community in general. And Shelley, we talked a little bit about just citizen engagement, and you had mentioned there's always kind of the what do I call it, the
Gadflies?
yeah, the gadflies. I didn't want
That's
to
what
say
they're
it.
called.
Yeah, the usual suspects, I would say,
Yeah.
in most public meetings.
Yeah.
But for a large part of us, and especially when we have embraced so many digital tools and everything else, there's that expectation that you shouldn't have to be public or you shouldn't have to be in the meetings to be able to engage with it or
Right.
send your comments, as you said. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there a little bit, but it was that when you think about citizen engagement, your first thought is usually like a crowded meeting room. It's a very important topic, or maybe very polarized topic. But there's so much engagement happening online that people can engage with that content, engage with those presentations, engage with the counselor's remarks in a passive way. They don't have to actually physically be present there anymore.
Right.
Sorry, that was the point I was making. It was a very long question.
I think you're right. And then, with COVID, I mean, even though we're after, it's pre-COVID, that, people don't like to be in crowded rooms anymore. So
that's a great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that was my version. I didn't realize it. So I guess the last kind of a point we're talking about, and thank you, Holly. Holly sent a note to our hosts and panelists here. Just the importance of meetings and effective meetings. I don't know, Q, if you can kind of go back in the time machine to when you first started. Was there a lot of pressure to get that meeting right? Did you feel a lot of stress and anxiety during, maybe your first public meeting that you were responsible for the agenda for? Is that something that you felt like stress and anxiety about when you first started?
Oh, did I? I think the very first one I did was, what year was that? The one I first did as an actual clerk was in 2018, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my clerk was out of town. It was just me. And I had to do the agenda from start to finish. Back then, we didn't have eScribe.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through this whole process of depression and all type of emotions because of this agenda. And I was like, it should not be that hard to get papers together in an order and get them out. And that changed my whole perspective on everything. Like, it should not be this hard to do that one piece of this job.
Right.
So after that, when she came back, we really had a discussion about where we was going with the technology, because I am actually part of my job description says I am on site IT for my department. I
Mhm.
am the only person in a department that has an on site IT person in their department. So for me, I had to sit down because I'm expected to do both aspects. I had to sit down with her and come up with a reasonable solution to our problem, which
Mhm.
was we need agenda management systems. We need something that actually works. Even though we went through a process where we didn't get what we wanted the first time, we figured out what we did not want when we got ready to find someone else, which we
Yeah,
found you.
that's great. And I love that. I mean, I think one of the biggest kind of challenges with a paper-based process, and I've done this myself. I've responded to RFPs and been in the last minute change that forces an update across 20 different copies, and each of those copies is 200, 300, 400 pages long, and you got to find the right page number, tear it out, put it back in, and do that ad infinitum. That the last minute updates is not necessarily the clerk's time management. Obviously, they've got their processes figured out after 10, 15 years in the role, but it's the time management from coming from other people, those last minute updates. In fact, and I wish I would have brought this slide with me, but when we asked clerks what was the number one improvement you would make in your meeting preparation process, 80% said fewer last minute changes. And I imagine a lot of that 80% is working through those paper-based processes where you're having to rip out that one page or get the whiteout out if you're really truly old school.
Right.
So Shelley, could you give me just for my layperson understanding, like the insight on what those last minute changes usually are or are concerning? Is it truly late breaking news or late breaking data, or is it just somebody not adhering to the process, so to speak?
A lot of times, it's just staff, they have a late report, and it's not necessarily their fault. Maybe they're waiting on another agency to
Mhm.
provide them some backup material, and so their report is late. And I've already put the agenda packet together, electronically in eScribe. I haven't finalized it yet, but I'm ready to go, ready to push the button. And then they're like, "Hey, I need to swap out this attachment." In paper, that would have been so stressful. I would have, I would have been like, no, I'm gonna have to be here for another 2 hours tonight.
Right.
But now with eScribe, no problem. Delete the old attachment, put the new one in there, and just repopulate it, and it's done. I mean, you just republish it, and it's easy. Within about 5 minutes, it's done,
That's great.
and you're ready to go. So yeah, it does relieve all of the stress. And then even the IT portion of it, it never fails. It'll be on a meeting day or an agenda distribution day is when, you have some kind of a technology blip, right? And you get stressed out. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got a meeting starting in 10 minutes and I have, no access or something.
Mhm.
But we've called eScribe, when we were ready to distribute an agenda packet within 30 minutes or whatever, and something got jammed up. Within 5 minutes, literally, we are back on track and ready to go.
I love that.
Yeah, their IT and customer service is top notch. I have never dealt with anybody, no company. I mean, this is not a sales thing at all. It's like I have never ever dealt with a company that had the response time like eScribe does, and it's
That's
consistent.
great. And I think part of that is just, yeah, a lot of our CS reps are tenured in their roles themselves. And they like we talked about it, the understanding that you cannot cancel a public meeting at the last
Right. I mean, yeah, it's
minute.
going to go on whether you want it to or not.
Right, because it's so important not only for the public accountability factor, but also to make sure that you're serving your residents with the information they need as well.
And the legal requirements.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting up on time. We're almost to the Q&A section. So Lori is our webinar operator. Lori, I was hoping you could put the poll up for our attendees. It's 2 questions. I promised 3, and it's only 2. So again, under promise, over deliver, so to speak. let's see if we have any Q&A. We do not. So yeah, if you have any last minute questions for Shelly or Q, please submit them in the chat or the Q&A feature. I'll continue to just talk on a little bit if you do have a question or anything like that. Q, I guess I'll pitch this one to you. Like, what is the, outside of adopting some kind of technology to reduce time spent on organizing or administering meetings, what is the one tip that you would give to somebody who's maybe starting a new career as a city clerk? What's something you've learned that you would pass on to them to help them do their jobs?
What I would pass on to them mostly would be take the advice of the other city clerks. They've done it. They perfected it. The gift and the curse of being a city clerk, I tell all people all the time, is they have perfected their craft. No matter how deep that goes, most of these people, city clerks catch stuff that other departments had missed completely.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they send us their attachments and things for the agenda, we've gone through that. We've caught everything that they've missed, misspelling of words, mistakes, dates. The clerk, that's the gift and the curse. And a lot of times the misprints on certain items and things like that, last minute changes, sometimes those are the clerks because the clerk catches everything everybody else is misses.
Oh, yeah. As
So
a former copy editor, I love that. Yeah.
So I would tell that person that if you really want to understand and get to the forefront of the job, ask another clerk. Ask someone that you trust, that's a clerk already. And clerks are very open about what they do. We have no lies, we hide no hands. We'll tell you exactly what it is that you will love and you will hate about the job.
I love that. I had the opportunity to go to an annual conference actually up in Canada. And you mentioned talking to other clerks. And one of the things that was just so amazing to me that they were giving out anniversary awards for how many years of attendance they've all gone to this conference. And there were some folks that had 30, 40, 50 years attending the same conference. So I think that's always something really important too, is just if you're curious about a tool, not necessarily even our tool, so to speak, ask around. There'll be people that have experience with it. They can tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, all those things. Yeah, I know just in my short term interacting with the clerk community, that is very tight knit because you guys are kind of the unsung heroes in the city administration. Shelley, same question for you right before we close. What's something that you would, maybe outside of just technology adoption, what is something you would impart as wisdom to a newer clerk?
I agree with Q. It's the other clerks are a resource that is unmatchable. I mean, you can't. Everyone is really willing to share their work, and so if it's almost a guarantee that somebody's already done something that you're going to try and do, somebody's already done it. So check with your other clerks and ask if they've ever done whatever your project is that you're working on. You will find that some people already have, we have a procedure manual on that, or we have a process, already in place, and this is what we're doing. And so you don't have to make it all up again. It's a great resource to use and utilize.
I love that. Yeah. Crowdsourcing the best practices. Great. Well, we don't have any additional questions and we're coming up on time. So I'd just like to say thank you, Turkwinski and Shelley, for joining us today, sharing some of your anecdotes, your experience as city clerks. I want to say thank you to all our clerks in the audience. I do know it's an unsung role, and the more I learn about it, the more I'm in love with clerks and everything they do for their communities. So thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Q. Thank you, audience members, for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on your time zone. And if you'd like to join us again, please visit eScribemeetings.com. We try to have monthly webinars on topics that are of interest to clerks and city administrators. So with that, I'll say see you next time, and thank you very much.
You're welcome, Christina. You all have a great evening.
Thanks.